I'm Metal Matt, and I'm at the Toyota Pavilion at Concord for a very special moment. The pavilion's turning 50. It's amazing, this venue in the foothills of Concord. I've had many great moments, including my graduation from high school in 1983, and I produced CC Rock and hosted it in this facility for 10 years with lots of great bands like Bad Company, The Scorpions, Motley Crue. I've got a lot of great historical footage of this venue, including the reconstruction back in the mid-90s and some great sound bites from the key members of the staff back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So sit back and relax. It's going to be a great walk down memory lane at the Toyota Pavilion at Concord.
For the summer festival demonstrated the need for a larger, permanent performing arts facility in Concord. In 1973, a joint venture between the City of Concord and the Mount Diablo Unified School District was made. The city asked numerous architects to develop and present plans for the Concord Pavilion. Frank Gehry was selected to be the architect. And on May 16, 1975, the pavilion opened its doors for the first time for a benefit concert sponsored by the Concord Jazz Festival featuring Henry Mancini and Sarah Vaughan. Carl Jefferson was there, and he remembers it well.
It was Sarah Vaughan was opening night with Henry Mancini. Oh, it was an exciting night, and I'm from Concord where the pavilion is and so forth. Everybody's proud of something good.
John Toffoli Jr., Director of Leisure Services for the City of Concord, helped the funding and building of the pavilion and became the general manager.
The Concord Pavilion was opened in 1975 as a place to enrich our lives and those of our children. And it certainly succeeded in that over the past 15 or 16 years.
Well, when you work for John Toffoli, I mean, you know, John was hired from Richmond and he was brought over here to form an arts department because Concord didn't have that. So Bud Stewart, who's the city manager then, brought John over, and that was his job, and he did. But little did we know he was this dreamer, this person with great ideas, and he didn't want to be bothered with the small stuff, or you know, he would develop an idea and then throw it at all of us in the department and leave it up to us to try to make it happen. You know, that happened not only with the Jazz Festival, we did swim meets. We did softball tournaments, major tournaments. We did golf tournaments. We did all kinds of stuff because of him, because he was this visionary. And I think that's why him and Carl Jefferson hit it off so well, because Jeff was the same thing. He was a visionary as well.
This is a remarkable feat for the City of Concord, for John Toffoli and his staff, that this place was so cleverly done, and how it was by a nationally known architect. Everything about it with John. Now, John's responsible for what exists up here. I had something to do with promoting it, but the credit is due to John and his staff for operating that facility. It's amazing, really.
Oh, I know.
It's a strong
I agree.
statement. That commercial cost me a lot, and I want you to
But what John wanted, he wanted to have everything that he could possibly have here. So the community would at least have a chance to see it, to see something. And believe me, we did everything you can imagine here. I mean, we had one-ring circus, we had professional wrestling, boxing, we did Broadway plays, the symphonies, the ballets. And what happened was, as we evolved after a couple of years of operation, we saw that the dynamics were changing on city council, because you're always subject to the council's opinion. And so we started seeing that the finances became a little more important. Concord wasn't really interested in underwriting these special events. So John found himself in a awkward position that he's going to have to start doing shows that maybe he didn't like hard rock and roll, acid. I mean, he didn't like that stuff, right? But we had to start creating a balance that those shows would pay for some of the shows, like the symphony. I mean, when we would have the San Francisco Symphony here, it would cost a bloody fortune. And quite frankly, sometimes they didn't do very well. And even the Concord Jazz Festival didn't do as well as it did in the park, because now it was competing with some of the major pop shows, the middle of the road or what have you.
A hole in the wall. I'm gonna crawl inside and die. You better, cause it's gonna be the last one you get. I come a ladder now. That be the
Well, I always used to say I had two jobs. We had an office job during the day when we were planning advertising or looking at box office issues or booking acts or whatever the case may be. And then 75 to 100 times a year, we had a night job when we came out to the facility. Our offices were in downtown Concord, the administrative staff. And so whenever there was a show of any type, we would come out here in the evening and settle up with the act, and then we'd know right before they were going to finish, we'd come out. I'd love to see if there was going to be an encore and just see the reaction of the audience who would come to see a show that we had been marketing and see if they enjoyed it, and happy faces leaving afterwards. There wasn't a whole lot of media exposure. You know, we knew the Jazz Festival had been the impetus to build a concert hall, and so there were an artist rendering that, you know, a pen and ink version that would be marketed, but the public really didn't see the construction. It was just up on Kirker Pass Road, and that was the road from Walnut Creek to get over to the East Contra Costa County. And actually, one time it was going to be the East-West Freeway, and that's one of the reasons they picked this, because they thought there was going to be a major thoroughfare, and boom, you could get right from Highway 24, 680 to the Pavilion, and that never happened. So, you know, ahead of time, most people probably thought, well, the Jazz Festival has a permanent home. And we're saying, well, we're going to have a lot of other entertainment. And actually, when it was first built, the city council said there'd be no rock music at the Pavilion. You know, this was the mid-'70s, and of course in the '60s and '70s, that rock had not the best reputation, and, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And very early on in the first year, we realized that economically, we weren't going to be able to survive without having rock music. So after 2 weeks of the second year, we'd had a sellout show with Seals and Crofts, and then the next week one with Boz Scaggs. And the Monday after the Boz Scaggs show, Bill Graham Presents called us and said, hey, let's talk about having us rent the Pavilion. So in our second season, they actually came out and rented the Pavilion and did 6 concerts. And so by then, the array of artists we had was, you know, from symphonies, country music, folk music, jazz, which had helped build the Pavilion, and rock and so forth. And you know, we took great pride in the fact that we had a very diverse thing. You know, one night we'd have Marshall Tucker Band, and we'd have security on horseback patrolling the hills around the Pavilion, clean up the Pavilion. And the next night have Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops. And the next night have a jazz show on Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday have 2 other shows. So we, you know, took great pride in having a diverse thing, and hopefully something that everyone in the city would and in the broader Bay Area would like to come out and see.
Well, what I think makes the Concord Pavilion special is that it was a community-built theater. It's a beautiful outdoor venue that Frank Gehry helped design, and it had a great blend of top concert acts coming to perform here and community events. And on that warm summer night, it's just a great place to see a concert. You get on top of the lawn, you can see Mount Diablo and the beautiful Diablo Valley.
The original Concord Pavilion was designed as a symphony hall and to also host the Concord Jazz Festival. So when the money for the symphony wasn't bringing enough revenue in to support the operation, concerts were starting to be brought in, and subsequently a lot of the shows that arrived would come up with their van or their truck and try to figure out how to put this equipment into a symphony hall. It was a challenge. And so my job was sort of straighten that out. I had a lot of road experience, a lot of traveling. Prior to coming to the Pavilion, I did 7 years on the road, traveling with various groups. So I knew it from the artist's perspective coming in and trying to help them understand how to fit their show into this building. So it was a tough time, and ultimately we had to change. Otherwise, those artists weren't going to come back. So that's what caused the expansion or the remodel of the building to occur.
It's really exciting, and I think the most important thing is that the pavilion didn't change that much. It's still intimate. It's still what it was the 21 years before.
It's interesting. I was just reading the other day. Live Nation's building in Michigan, I believe, a new amphitheater, $140 million to build an amphitheater. The original building here in '75 was $4.2 million, and we spent another $18 million to remodel. So for roughly $25 million, you have an amphitheater that's worth over $150 million. It's pretty good return on your investment in my book. And plus what it does for the wealth of the community and adds popular music. So it was fun to do the remodel. We did it without missing a season, which was impressive. It was challenging. The first opening show was tough. We were doing the House of Blues tours with Joe Cocker as a trial run, just to see if all the bathroom toilets flushed and make sure people could get in the parking lot okay and such. And I had called the manager about 2 weeks before and said, we're not going to make it. And 11 days before the first show, there was no concrete in the lower bowl here. None of even the seats were in. I mean, they were still pouring concrete. And the day we opened up the show to come in, they were still bolting chairs on when the audience was coming into the venue. And so later on, I was talking to the tour manager, and she said, well, you can't cancel the show because my family lives in that town. I'm down in LA at the House of Blues, but we're doing this tour. You can't cancel because I come from Concord. And I said, oh, well, I think we may have to. She said, we're okay, just put us up in the Holiday Inn down the street for dressing rooms. If we don't have dressing rooms, and we can do the show. So we did the show, and then a year later they came back, and I saw the woman again, and she said, you know what's an interesting story is that my sister came to the show, and she met the guy who was installing the seats. Now they're married. I went, wow, amazing what happens at the pavilion, A lot of friendships and a lot of great times. And I think that's probably the best thing about the pavilion is that the friendships and the audiences, the staff was fantastic. A lot of close friendships came about, a lot of marriages came about. Now the kids are working here. It's quite an honor for Concord to have a building like this.
There were some artists that really liked coming back here. I think James Taylor was one, where they just enjoyed the vibe of the facility. Again, being that outdoor amphitheater. Some artists prefer doing the indoor arena shows, but I think there are some artists that really enjoy the outdoor.
The night before, I got a call at like 3 a.m. in the morning at my house when I'm sleeping in bed, woke me up, and it was the tour manager for the Blues Brothers. And he said, hey Doug, we're down in LA, we just finished the show. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, are they gonna cancel? Am I gonna be pulling the plug? And he goes, no, we just finished the show. And it went very well, but John was having a really tough time. John Belushi was having a really tough time with the catering. And I need a few things on the catering to be fixed. And I said, what is it? He says, make sure that he's going on a diet. He wants diet guacamole dip. Make sure the guacamole dip is diet, okay? And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And hung up the phone. I went, phew, cheated death. I thought the show was gonna cancel, and here all I had to worry about was the catering. So we never knew what diet guacamole dip was, but we labeled it diet guacamole dip on the bowl. But It was fun, you know. And I never knew that John Belushi could be an aerobic. You know, he could do backflips on the stage, and so he ran up in the old stage, all the way down the hall and started doing backflips across stage, and then landed. It was quite impressive. It was an amazing show. If you were here, you saw one of the best shows of the Pavilion's history.
John saw the need. Once again, his vision, he saw that the arts was not going to be able to be supported in this facility, and we were going to have to take this other direction into the middle of the road music, rock and roll music. So he had to find some way to create a mechanism that would support the arts. So a nonprofit organization that he worked with, Scott Belding was the executive director, and it was their job to keep the arts alive so they wouldn't get lost. So the original concept was to keep the arts alive, and they did that. I mean, they provided volunteers, they had fundraisers, they had grants, and even at one time when we lost a concession contract, the Pavilion Associates actually ran the concessions here to carry it along until we got somebody else. So they were really a great tool to help us.
Bill Graham and John Toffley and I met many times in his office, and once he started coming out here and so forth. So we had many interactions, and for 3 years, the second, third, and fourth year of the Pavilion, they rented the building more than any other promoter to do shows. And after that years, we had this lawsuit with James Taylor, and we realized we were trying to book an act at the Pavilion, and then one or two promoters were trying to book the same act in the same place. And you know, Bill Graham called me one time, we were booking Andy Gibb, and he called up and he was screaming in the phone. He says, "How could you pay that kid $35,000? And I said, "Bill, I don't know that much, but Andy Gibb is the Concord Pavilion. I mean, you put the picture in the dictionary, he fits our audience, the suburban audience and so forth." And he sold out in like 2 or 3 days. The night we booked, the city council voted to have Bill Graham start in the 1986 season as the sole booker. We went to dinner afterwards, after the city council meeting, at TR's restaurant, which is now our Congressman Mark DeSaulni's restaurant. And I was sitting right next to Bill Graham, and I said, "You know, Bill, we got to get the Grateful Dead here." We'd had their bands when they'd split up, but we never had the Grateful Dead, and of course they had quite a reputation. And Bill says, "Not going to happen." He realized that he was taking too much of a chance to have the Grateful Dead and their audience come out to the Pavilion, so that actually never happened.
On the night that Huey Lewis was playing here, we were sitting up in the conference room. John, and I'm not sure if Jay Bettercray was there, but I was there, and it was raining and it was bad weather. And we said, "Bill, you can't, and he arrived in a helicopter, and he said, you can't leave here. I mean, my understanding was that his pilot did not have instrument training. So the low ceiling, you can't fly home. He lived in Marin. And he said, no, I trust. His pilot's name was Killer. So he said, no, I trust Killer. I mean, I know he can get me home safe. So we said, no, we'll get you a limo, we'll drive you home. Well, you know what happened. You know, he was killed. I mean, the pilot was following Highway 37, I think, and just ran into the tower. But I'll never forget that as well. So the next morning, you know, I get a call that, you know, what had happened.
Suckers walk, money talks, but it can't touch my free-like box. Oh, baby. That's right. Oh, yeah. It's all right. You ever? Mysteries of the days of old. Find the key, you got the gold. Ooh. 1, 2, 3, like box for me. 1, 2, 3, like box. Oh yeah. 1, 2, 3, like box. 1, 2, 3, like box.
One thing we found is that we were the summer home of the San Francisco Symphony before Davies Hall was built for about 3 or 4 years. And they'd call up and say, hey, we booked Montserrat Caballé, who was the most famous soprano in the world at the time. And I'm thinking, who's going to come out to Concord to watch that? And sometimes no one did. And John Toffley's analogy was that you look through a telescope and you look at the small end and it goes out to the big thing and you see the stars. And he says, you know, people in Concord look through the small end of the telescope, they look out and there's San Francisco. And you're going to go in there for dinner, to go to a concert, go to a Giants game, 49ers game. People in San Francisco look through the big end of the telescope and they look out and here's Concord at the small end. And you have to go across the bridge. Can you go across the Bay Bridge? Can you drive all the way out to Concord? So we realized that a lot of acts that were big box office acts weren't going to play in Concord. And conversely, some things that wouldn't work in San Francisco would be a smash in Concord. So.
You may see your life as a compromise. You may live to find the promise dancing in your eyes. Nobody knows it's meant to be. Let the magic of the moment say it all to
There's still sometimes you come in here and it rumbles around a little bit. You can still hear the guitar solo from last week's concert floating around inside of here. But it's for an amphitheater, it's fantastic, and it's a model amphitheater for the country. It's quite an honor for Concord to have a building like this. There's a lot of cities that would die to have a pavilion in their city with the attention that it brings to the community.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this historical look at the Toyota Pavilion at Concord, an amazing amphitheater here in Contra Costa County. Thank you very much to Live Nation and Polo Loco for making this video possible. I enjoyed making it. It was a labor of love. So I'll see you at the show. Bye-bye.